Mateo, last time we talked about a famous cryptid, we basically torpedoed the shit out of it. We sunk Nessie like it was the goddamn Titanic, and there were no conspiracies surrounding that. We just sunk that motherfucker.
Yeah.
We pooped right on its legacy.
But one thing we used to come to that conclusion of not believing in Nessie anymore was that the lack of a breeding population. And when it comes to Bigfoot, Mike, you'd have to agree that it seems like we have a breeding population when it comes to Bigfoot, right?
I would not agree. I don't think there's any evidence to support that whatsoever.
Really, for the continued sightings for as many years, all over the world. Yeah,
because I don't think it's a unknown hominid. I think there's something supernatural and spooky to it.
Yes, that's my kind of Bigfoot.
Whether it be a spirit or an interdimensional being. I'm not here for the boring scientific lost hominid theory.
Well, even if it's a lost hominid, I want it to be like a civilization. I want them to be like, yeah, we wash our clothes and shit that we make out of vines. You know, I don't want them to be this rabid animal.
To them, we're the savages.
They have like computers made out of rocks and shit that actually work.
Yeah. It's like we would think of it as like weird nature magic, but instead it's just them being awesome and being able to make technology out of nature. It's like that SCP thing that we did, the Director Jones briefing about Bigfoot and how they were a civilization that was able to build vehicles out of trees and animals and and like they were able to somehow make the animals like work together to create these huge transports and make cities out of living vines and trees and all sorts of wacky stuff. But yeah, that's on our YouTube channel. Go give it a listen. It's pretty entertaining stuff. But the thing there is the joke in there, I guess, is that SCP-1000 is what we call Bigfoot, and it was made to become like a joke because the Foundation didn't want its existence being known, because at one point there was a war between humanity and the Bigfoot, and we ended up slaughtering I shouldn't say all, but we ended up slaughtering most of the Bigfoot tribes on Earth. And there were a few left on Earth, and the Foundation was trying to track them down. So they wanted to make it seem like it was a joke, that the existence of Bigfoot was something to be mocked, because just like we talk about with the UFOs, it just discredits the whole subject. So if it's made to be ridiculous, then no one will believe you anyway if you're talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that hits awfully close to home with what we're going to talk about tonight. I mean, for as long as Bigfoot has been seen by people, which is since like the beginning of time, really, and it's been seen all over the world, like we all know, all the interactions people have had with him couldn't have been peaceful, right?
I mean, you wouldn't think so. Look at what the Europeans did with the natives once they came to the New World.
Yeah, just like we talked about with the Blemye, they just got called. They just got rounded up by dudes on horses and spears and...
Yeah.
Well, we know about Bigfoot throwing rocks and making weird noises and the screams. I can't get over the YouTube videos of the Bigfoot vocalizations. Those things are so fucking creepy, man.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think that those are Bigfoot calls. Some of them are probably people, and I bet some of them are fox calls.
Mm-hmm. I remember a while ago we shared a video on Twitter, I believe, about some specific Bigfoot vocalization video. And I think it was Celesta who mentioned the sounds that foxes make. And she put up a video, and I was shocked, man. They make some fucking weird noises.
They do. And some of it, if you didn't know any better, would be very creepy sounding.
All those fucking woodland creatures do, man. They're all creepy sounding.
Yeah, I mean, I got screamed at by a deer one time last year. It freaked me out. I had never heard a deer make a noise like that before. It
Really?
sounded like the scream of a demon.
Oh
Yeah.
my God! It screamed at you.
I never told you about that.
No.
Oh my God. All right. So I had a power outage at my house at one point last year. And what had happened was a transformer exploded and we didn't know how long it was going to be out for. And one of our neighbors works for the power company and said that it could potentially be out for a couple of days. So we didn't want our food to go bad. So I went over to my girlfriend's dad's land. He's got he owns a bunch of woodland, but he's got a big barn on the land. And over there he's got a couple freezers. So I was going over to put my food in there, and then we were going to pick up a small generator. And so I get over there. I'm there before he is, and it's nighttime. And I pull in, and as I'm pulling in, my headlights illuminate these eyes that are like, it seems like they're about 6 feet off the ground. So I don't know what they are. I just see the eye glow. And I get out of the car and I start walking around, and I hear this huffing and then a really loud scream. And I'm like, what the hell was that? It sounded like a demon scream. And it was really freaking me out. And then I turned on the flashlight on my phone, which I wasn't close enough to be able to see them. They were probably, I would say, 50 yards away in the tree line. And maybe a little more. But the flashlight was reflecting all these eyes. And I saw the set of eyes like go from being like a foot off the ground to like 5 feet off the ground. And I'm like freaking out, and then they start doing the scream again, and I just see all these eyes showing up. There were probably 4 sets of eyes. And I don't know what to do. I'm like, what the fuck? I don't have a key to get in the barn. I'm waiting for her dad to show up. Finally, he shows up, and he's got a really big truck, and he had his high beams on when he pulled in. And when he pulled in, the high beams illuminated this family of deer that were standing along the tree line watching me.
Okay, so
and then they ran off.
So you've told this story before, but I don't know if it's my memory or not. I believe you told the story on the show, but I think you failed to mention them doing that fucking demon scream.
Oh, really? Yeah, because that's what freaked me out. It wasn't, if I just saw the eyes, I probably would have been, I would have thought it was, I don't know, probably anything. Deer probably is what I would have thought. I didn't know deer could scream. So when they started screaming at me, I'm like, what the hell is 6 feet tall that would be screaming? I couldn't think of anything that was 6 feet tall that would be screaming at me. And so I started to freak out. Like, is it a Bigfoot? Is it a demon? What is going on? Yeah.
I don't mean to laugh, but holy shit.
Hey man, it's ridiculous. It's okay to laugh at it.
I'm going to send you a video, and please tell me and the listeners if the scream was something similar to this.
Okay.
Please stand by.
It's very similar to that.
No. See, there you go.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have survived that situation, unfortunately.
But yeah, it sounded very much like that. It was terrifying. And I had no idea that deer could make that noise. No idea. I assumed that maybe the deer would grunt, maybe make some like low kind of throaty noises, but never thought that deer could scream. And it freaked me out because you just see the eye shine of something that's around the same height as you are, and it starts screaming at you. It's a little unnerving.
Holy shit. See, everything in the woods is a demon. Bigfoot too.
No, a Bigfoot is gentle and loving and kind, and he just wants to eat berries and frolic in the forest.
Braid branches and shit.
Yeah. Maybe use some waterfalls as like a water slide, or go swimming in a pond, or swing from vines. He's just Bigfoot doing Bigfoot things. That's all. He wouldn't hurt a fly.
I always believed that that's why they made national parks, was to give the remaining populace of Bigfoot a free roaming area, since we slaughtered them all.
So it's like the reservations for Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I know, Mr. Bigfoot, I know that used to roam the land freely and be able to, exist out in the wild, but we're going to have to ask you to stay in this park and, eat berries and do Bigfoot shit. Stay away from people.
What if it was some type of like reclamation or something like that? The big feet were like, we'll just fuck up every fucking town we come across. And the government's like, all right, we'll make these areas national parks and they'll be preserved.
No, because remember, I just said they're peace-loving creatures that would never hurt a single fly.
They had to, though. They had to play the monster card to have a home.
They're kind and loving, and they just said, just don't kill us. We'll give you hugs. And they're like, oh, they're offering hugs. We got it. Fine, you can have these state parks, and you can just kind of hang out, just stay away from people. They don't want to be hugged. And occasionally one gets excited and wants to come out and hug, and people get freaked out, and then they run away. It's a sad existence being a Bigfoot in a national park.
Yeah, I bet.
It's not. They're happy doing Bigfoot shit, being peaceful.
I wouldn't want to shoot that Bigfoot.
Why would you want to shoot any Bigfoot?
Well, in the story that I'm going to share with you tonight, you'll know why.
It's lies. It's all propaganda.
It could be.
It's part of the anti-Bigfoot movement.
It is just a story that's been floating around the internet. I found it in an article from Mysterious Universe, and they said that it comes from a few old school newspapers, and some of the people's identity. I mean, they found people that go by the names of the people in the story that did exist in that time. But as far as a Bigfoot story goes, this is awesome. And I'm not one of the people who are one of those like, yeah, go out and hunt a Bigfoot. I hate that the TV shows even call it like Bigfoot hunting. I totally prefer squatching over, Bigfoot hunting. It's always sad to hear of stories when somebody claims to, shoot a Bigfoot while hunting, unless it's charging you or something like that. I don't think you should just snipe a fucking legendary creature in the side of the head. But this story takes place in 1855 in Oklahoma, in an area that was controlled by a tribe called the how did you say this, Mike? Choctaw?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, let's go with Choctaw.
Okay.
But the Choctaw tribe was plagued by bandits that would come from the wilderness and steal their grains and vegetables, and on occasion some livestock, and then escape back into the woods before anybody could do anything. But when they did see them, they would describe them as hairy men, just like a classic Bigfoot, basically. But the tribe tried their best to confront or stop these raiders, but they had no luck. And what happens next is the only thing you can expect from a marauding band of big feet. They soon moved on from stealing corn, chicken, and cows to kidnapping people, and on top of that, mainly children. And as you can imagine, this pissed off the Choctaw people right the fuck off, and they gathered a 30-man war band to go find these bandits that kept robbing them and now that were taking their people. Now, I don't know if at the time, we hear a lot about like Native American tribes talking about Bigfoot or wild men and stuff like that. I don't know why in the story these creatures are new to them. It seems like, for me, I instantly thought at this point, so can 30 dudes really stop an entire gang of big feet? But the Choctaw probably thought the same thing, because they used a special unit of warriors. They were called the Light Horsemen. They were a cavalry unit known for its members' shockingly large stature. And the largest in this party that was gathered was a dude named Hamas Tubi and his 6 sons. And they were all reportedly well over 7 feet tall. So these are giant fucking dudes, which is a pretty interesting thing on its own, right? I mean,
yeah, especially back then, over 100 years ago, that was exceptionally tall.
Yeah, if we're talking about all these dudes, this whole group being huge like that, and we get into specifics with these 7 people, are we talking about a race of giants here?
I don't know if it would necessarily be a race of giants. Maybe it was just part of the genetic makeup of that particular tribe or that particular family within the tribe. Or maybe they were part Bigfoot.
It could be, who knows? But I mean,
it could be
to have that many people that are that tall. I mean, they're not saying they were 6 feet tall. They said they were known for being huge. They were people called them giants, but this group of these giants, giant warriors, were joined by a general named Joshua LaFleur, and who was half Choctaw and half French. So I don't know if he just heard about the problem. I didn't find anything about that. Did you find out anything about why this dude was there, or was he just there?
Wasn't he half Choctaw?
Yeah, I wonder if they just complained to him, like at a station somewhere, or or was he just there with his people because he was a general?
I think he was just there because he probably visiting home. Hey mom, just came to hang out. What's going on? Oh my God, you have no idea. We've been being attacked by these hairy monsters. Well, you know what? I'm going to take the biggest, baddest sons of bitches we have, and we're going to go fuck me somebody up.
Yeah.
And then they went on a journey to go, fuck up some Bigfoots.
Well, they rode for over 14 hours trying to reach a place where the bandits were known to frequent when LaFleur ordered the men to stop. He pulled out a telescope and started scouting the area, and he said that he could see the enemy ahead and ordered a full charge from the whole unit there. They were soon stopped in their tracks by a smell so foul that their horses wouldn't even continue. But after a few minutes of everybody gagging and dry heaving, they continued on through an area thick with brush, and once they cleared it, they discovered the source of that putrid smell, which was what they called, quote, a mound of earth, comprised of body parts in various stages of decomposition. And it was so disgusting that apparently it froze all the men with fear, even these giant dudes. And they staggered around in a daze until they noticed 3, quote, giant ape-like monsters, so big they dwarfed the 7-foot-tall TB brothers. And now, I mean, when we're talking about a Bigfoot, 7-8 feet is like the average, right? So we're talking about what?
Well, yeah. I would say probably that 7 or 8 feet, it tends to be on the small side of things as far as Bigfoot reports
really
go. Yeah, I mean, most people say that they're 9 feet tall. Some people even have gone as high as 12 feet tall. I would say typically if you see something that's 7 feet tall as a Bigfoot, it's a runt.
Well, it looks like in this encounter, these are the 12-foot tall ones because they sound huge. But without a word, LaFleur charged the creatures, whereupon reaching one of them was struck off his horse. And they said the horse was hit so hard it hit the floor dead. And LaFleur quickly sprang to his feet, unloading his gun into the creatures. And they noted that it was hit several times, but it wouldn't even bleed. It had no reaction to being shot at all.
Sounds like the wolves from Skinwalker.
Yeah. As LaFleur continued to fire, and before the light horseman could react, the monster grabbed him and does what giant pissed off shot Bigfoots do. Punch his fucking head off. And seeing this shocked
that kills me. He just like Mortal Kombat style, just uppercuts him and his head goes flying.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, we're talking about a 12-foot tall thing. I mean, it could do that, and it did. And God, can you imagine standing there saying that? I mean, just like looking at this flesh mound, looking up, going, what the fuck? And watching this dude just go straight for him. Like all that fast. And then seeing his head fly off. But I guess that, they didn't shit their pants, but it shocked them into action. And they fired a volley at these 3 hairy beast things. And remember, this is a 30-person strong group. So this is a huge volley. And they said that 2 out of 3 of them dropped. And it injured one of them. And it tried to make a break for it. But the 2B bros chased it down and cut its head off. And they said they burnt all the bodies that they had after that. But that's the supposed Bigfoot War of 1855. Now, like I said, we've heard about throwing stones and the screaming and sometimes even banging. But that's it's not like these Bigfoots went out and looked for a fight. Well, maybe you can say they did when they started taking people, but that just kind of freaked me out to hear about Bigfoot kidnapping children. And it sounds like for food, right?
Maybe. Or maybe it was like a a Lenny thing from Of Mice and Men, where they just thought he was cute and they wanted to play with the kid, and they just didn't realize their strength, and they killed the kid by accident.
They had just hugged him to death?
Yeah.
Well, I only can hope so, because that just fucked up my whole theory about these national parks. And it even made me think about the missing 411. Maybe those places are just made for like fucking feeding areas for these things. It's all a lot of kids, right? When it comes to the missing 411.
A lot of the time, yeah. And there was that one report of a hairy man carrying a sack over his shoulder as he was running. So maybe, I don't know. I think I joked in an episode that it was like a cabin in the woods, and that's why the park systems cover it up, because it's just some like nefarious deal that was made between humans and something else to sacrifice a certain amount of people to them with no repercussions whatsoever in order to maintain the balance or keep the peace or whatever you want to say about it. But I could see that.
Well, what do you think about that? I've always found that to be very weird when you hear about how the government has these huge areas of land where nobody can fucking go. I mean, I even think about that when I see buildings around where I live, like literally a few blocks from me. There's this place, it's like a floral place. It's always been a floral place. It's in a huge building on the corner. It has a small showroom like through the front window. And I've never, ever, since a kid, since I was born, I've been in this area. I've never seen a fucking person in there. My brain just has to go, what really is that building? What do you think about national parks like that, where there's a lot of areas where, they have camping places, but the government's actually sanctioned places where people can't go?
Yeah, and that's kind of what leads to a lot of these conspiracy theories, I think, like places like Area 51 or the Dulce base or any of those underground bases that Phil Schneider talked about. Oh, actually, I think that was Dulce. But there's a lot of places like that. And I think when you have a government that's so closely tied with private industry and the military, that you're bound to get a lot of secrecy. And for that reason, you call it national security, call it protection of assets, whatever you want. It's there to keep the public eye out. If our enemies were to see the stuff that we have that's top secret, then we would lose the edge, even though we wouldn't, because our enemies have nothing that can compete with anything that we have. But they'll keep telling you that it's a matter of national security, that you don't know what it is, which is bullshit. But me crying out into the ether isn't going to change anything. But I think it's just part of the government system that we have, that there's areas that are secret, and I think a lot of them probably have to do with military, whether it be it's places for training or testing. But I think that's typically going to be the reasons why, or it's like an entrance to an underground base, which just because a base is underground doesn't necessarily mean that it's got anything to do with aliens. We know of the government has declassified certain underground bases that they had that were secret. So it's I think when these areas are blocked off, it's not necessarily for Bigfoot or anything like that. Although it would be fun to say that some of these places are blocked off because of like dimensional rifts or things like that. You walk in and you come out and you've got like a fucking second head growing out your back from another dimension.
Let's say it's not just a Bigfoot sanctuary. It could be a place to hide anything like that.
Yeah, and maybe could be places like the Skinwalker Ranch, where it's just like a center where the fabric of our reality is thin and things are able to cross over and phenomena occurs, and it's being studied so that we can understand this stuff, and maybe all this stuff does tie together. And UFOs are a relation to what these events are, And that's why Bigfoot can teleport and disappear, and why he's never been caught. And what's interesting to me with the story that you told is they killed him and burned him. And it was never, you would think that they would want some sort of trophy or something to show that they had killed off these things. Like if for nothing else, for peace of mind of their tribe.
Well,
if not for proof, you know?
Well, that's my problem with the story as well, is that they said that they cut the head off the one that was trying to get away. I guarantee you they kept it, and there's nothing written about that.
Yeah, right. And to me, it just the whole thing from the brothers all being over 7 feet tall, like it really sounds like one of those tall tales. You know, like Paul Bunyan or John Henry, that type of thing, like the 7 foot tall natives that took on the tribe of Bigfoot.
Yeah, it does have a little bit of a old Western dime novel feel to it. It's very interesting, though. If we're going to take this just as it is, as another supposed Bigfoot encounter, I mean, this is heavy duty shit. This has everything you want. Kidnapping, a hunt, fucking super punch of death.
I love the super punch. That's the best.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites.
Well, go
ahead.
A little scary to think that it took a volley of 30 guns to drop these things, though, right?
Yeah, but who's to say how many actually hit?
Very true. It's just a way more than I thought it would take to drop a Bigfoot. Maybe that's why hunters have no luck. Bullets just don't do shit to Bigfoot.
Yeah. But it seems like there were a few different stories that came out in the 1800s about people being killed by Bigfoot. And a lot of them, a lot of the stories seem to be similar to the fearsome critters of the Lumberwoods type things. Like it was told by people that were in the forests cutting timber, talking about these Bigfoot attacks or a hairy wild man.
I'm glad you say that, because that's another feeling I got when I read that Bigfoot fight, is that it felt like the creatures of the Lumberwoods, even with the tall Native Americans. You know, they're, just before they settled the wildlands of the fucking great North Americas, there was these tribes and they were all 9 feet tall. Again, harkens back to like the Blemye, like, oh, these tribes of people that were like this. It just seems like a little fairy tale-ish, or I don't know. It just made me think of the Lumberwood stuff instantly.
Well, there was a specific story from 1895 from Northern California. And one of the guys working in the woods told this story that a bunch of members of his crew had a camp that they were working out of, I should say. And it started, men started to disappear from the camp. And over the span of 2 months, a large number of men had disappeared from the camp. And when their bodies were found, they were all mangled and torn apart. And one man ended up returning to camp after he had survived an attack by what he described as a hairy wild man. His entire body was covered with fur and he had a big shaggy beard. And he said the only way that he was able to get it off of him was with his axe. Yeah. And that's just one instance of that from the 1800s, but these stories even persisted into the 1900s, and there was a story from 1924. There were these 4 prospectors. They were out mining in the wilderness surrounding Mount St. Helens in Washington. And they were out in a remote area of the woods near a branch of the Lewis River. And they said they were about 8 miles from Spirit Lake when they came across this series of footprints in the mud. They said it looked human-like, but they were about 14 inches long and it had really stubby toes. After coming across this, they began to see these large creatures through the trees as they were walking. And it kind of seemed like they were watching them, but just kind of keeping pace. And they described them as being around 7 feet tall, and they looked kind of like a gorilla. And they said they spotted it on at least four different occasions on their trip. And it was covered in long black hair. And they said that it had 2 4-inch long ears that stood straight up.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that's a description I've not heard in Bigfoot before, having pointy ears. But
I've heard that in Dogman descriptions, though.
yeah, true. That is true. But at one point, apparently, one of the prospectors, a man named Marion Smith, got freaked out by this thing following and started firing at it in the woods, which made it run away through the woods, and it ended up coming back, though. And it seemed even more curious at this point when it came back. So later in their trip, one of the men saw the creature standing near the edge of a canyon, and he shot it, and it fell off the edge of the canyon, and the canyon led into a ravine 400 feet deep. So they're assuming that it fell off and died, and they were like, "Wow, that was weird," and kind of went on. And they went back to camp. I mean, what do? You just shot a Bigfoot off the edge of a canyon. What can you do at that point? So they went back to camp, and as night started to fall, they began to hear this pounding on the roof of their cabin. And they said that it became so violent that the entire cabin started to shake. And so naturally they all grabbed their guns, getting freaked out and not knowing what was going on. But then all of a sudden, in addition to the pounding going on top of the cabin, large rocks started to be thrown at the cabin. And some of them were big enough that they broke pieces off the side of the cabin, and some went through the windows. One even crashed through the roof and hit one of the men and knocked him unconscious.
Damn.
Yeah. So these guys reported there were dozens, plural, dozens of these 7-foot tall ape things surrounding their cabin.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So they started shooting out the windows and trying to get these things off of them. And they were unrelenting, kind of like the Hopkinsville goblins. They would just keep shooting, and it didn't seem to scare them away. They kept coming and fucking with them. And they said that they attacked the cabin until the sun came up, and then they dispersed and went back into the woods. And this freaked them out enough that the men left the area and never went back, despite there being a profitable haul there as far as mining goes.
Yeah, I think we may have touched on this very, very long time ago, but that's always been the scariest Bigfoot attack story. I mean, to have an encounter like that go down,
yeah,
and last more than 10 minutes is rough.
Right, yeah. But you got to think about it. If they're throwing rocks and shit through the windows and strong enough to put holes in the roof by throwing rocks, and there's dozens of them, if they wanted to kill these people, they would have. They were sending a message, and that's what they were doing. Mm-hmm. They're telling them to get the fuck out, and so they did.
Yikes.
But afterwards, that area became known as Ape Canyon.
Huh.
Yeah.
Dude, if they were throwing rocks through the window, I wonder if they were just that close, or they all have like fucking wicked awesome arms.
I don't know. Maybe they're just throwing it like a shot put. Just whoosh. Or maybe they had some like cool primitive catapult thing and were just flinging huge boulders.
They're all dressed in their twine skirts, ready for battle.
No, fuck the skirts, man. Let it hang free. You gotta be comfortable if you're a Bigfoot, you know?
Yeah, let that junk breathe during battle.
Yeah, the last thing you want is underwear riding up on your boys while you're trying to smash some windows with boulders, you know?
Especially if they're made of like twisted sticks and stuff.
Yeah. You get a piece of grass tickling your butthole, it's gonna really take you out of your murderous rage.
So, after hearing both of these stories, you still think they just want a hug?
Yeah, see, this was a misunderstanding. Well, maybe not. But maybe it was. I mean, these guys were kind of dicks in my story. They just shot this guy because he was hanging out. You know, they were the ones that were entering the woods, and they encountered this thing clearly just living in its den, being awesome. And they're just like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm going to shoot you in the face and knock you off a fucking thing.
I thought that was pretty shitty too. I don't think that would be my first reaction if I saw a Bigfoot if I was in the woods, especially being like an experienced woodsman, right? These guys, I don't know why they would just wing a Bigfoot. Shoot it. It falls off the ravine. Shit. Maybe it was just trying to give him a warning shot. These things fucking hug all the time. Get out of here.
Yeah, and they were, when they gave when they encountered him the first time and they shot off in the woods, he was curious. He's like, what the hell is that? I've never seen anything like that before. It's amazing.
Are these guys going to let me hug them? Can I hug these guys? That's how they keep all the Bigfoot at bay in the fucking national parks. They just do like occasional airdrops of stuffed animals and shit for them to hug on. They're like specialty made 9-foot tall teddy bears. They're all made of leather. They're all extra durable. They hug them so hard and
strong enough that it can hand up to the rigors of Bigfoot love.
And you know, there's one Bigfoot that's just got to be a perv, and he's dry humping the thing.
He's gonna bang it.
Yeah.
Those big feets. I don't know, man. There's maybe there's two different breeds of Bigfoot. Or maybe it's different factions. Like you've got the peaceful hippie big feet, and then you've got the militant kill all human big feet.
I'm hip with that when it comes to these things. I mean, when it comes to even description variation, there's got to be different types of these things.
Yeah, because they do seem to have different variants in color, especially. Some of them are described as being having black fur. Then there's the other that's like brownish auburn fur, like a orangutan. It's, I mean, it could be just that they come in different colors. But if you look at species of apes, you don't see red-haired gorillas, and you don't see black orangutans. You know, so I don't know. Maybe, but it's just fun to think about. What if there's a murderous group and they're like, fuck these people, they killed all of our brethren in the past? Because we probably did, because let's be honest, we're fucking dicks. We do that sort of thing.
Well, doesn't it make you think when you hear about attacks like this in this period of time that maybe that it had to have happened, right? If these attacks were happening, there had to have been some military action to, you know, do some type of, just like the Choctaw tribe did, some type of group banded together and went and looked for these things. You know, they had to have called these creatures.
Well, and there's a lot of reports from native tribes about these beings, and a lot of the beliefs were that they were spiritual beings, that, you know, not necessarily spiritual beings meaning that they go out and meditate and shit, but in that they are able to walk in the spirit world.
Sorry. They light incense and shit and meditate for 2 hours a day.
Yeah, they just sit there in the lotus position. No.
So hearing such a drastic difference in behavior here, with the looting a village, a tribe, and then taking children, and apparent evidence of them not cannibalizing, but eating these children, what's the chances of these actually being wild men and not Bigfoot?
What do you mean? Like just dudes that went out and got really hairy?
Yeah, just
live in the woods.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that counter that. I totally agree. But just, yeah, like we always hear about wild children that are found. Maybe in this period of time, there's more people that just took to the woods. People fucking abandoned children, go live in the woods and grow up. Or people just fucking run out of work and money and go live in the woods for food. That was commonplace back then.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
You're a wild man.
Because if think about how big they're being described as, and the foot size that people find with the cast and everything, it's unless you go wild and you get a growth spurt and disproportionately large feet. I'm not thinking it's going to be a wild man, but maybe some of the sightings are a wild man, but I would be very hesitant to lump the majority of those in as savage wild men that live in the woods.
The behavior is just so strange to rob them of their corn and shit like that. I mean, that had to have happened too if these things existed.
Well, things have to eat, and even among other tribes, there would be that sort of thing going on, and even with the Europeans coming in, and even now, really, there's still bandits that will steal your shit, and in some way, shape, or form, they're not stealing your shit for fun in most cases. There's a reason behind them stealing your stuff.
Yeah, I guess even with wild animals, I mean, if a bear can wander into your camp and steal your fucking food, so can a Bigfoot.
Yeah, or they'll even steal from each other. Like a group of coyotes brings down a deer, and a bear will wander in and be like, fuck off, coyote. I'm going to eat till I'm full, and then you guys can have the rest. I'm like, God damn it. Well, that's nature, man. So if something finds a food source that's readily available, why begrudge it its ability to survive? You can we look at it because it's affecting us as humans. It's taking our babies, but do we think about it when we pluck an animal from the woods because it's feeding us? So you put it in reverse, especially if it's a flesh and blood creature that's intelligent and it's able to, it's got its own civilization, or it's able to hunt and be aware of civilization in some way, I guess. Its own sort of civilization. It's looking at what it's taking as a food source. It's not looking at it as being someone's child, someone's son or daughter. It's like, hey, this is easy pickings and I'm hungry, so yoink. It's nature, it's survival. The only reason you wouldn't do that to a human child is because you yourself are human and you have human children. But if you were in a situation where you were starving to death and you saw a mother deer and her baby deer, and that was the only food source that you had seen for weeks, you're going to kill them both and eat them, and you're not going to think about it.
Well, I guess in closing, are you surprised that there's stories like this about Bigfoot? And do you think that as the human race expands and eats up more wooded areas, that we're going to see a possible increase in stories like this?
Nah. Unless they start really getting into like national parks. Because I think you're onto something with that national park thing. Because all the missing 411 stuff and the Bigfoot sightings and the fact that they have had military rangers involved in search and rescue missions, fully armed with automatic weapons. Like, that's not something you'll typically do when hunting for a missing child.
Yeah, I gotta admit, man, I'm scared of those national parks.
Don't you live near Yosemite?
Somewhat. I had a friend tell me recently they were gonna go to a national park, and I was like, with your kids? You're gonna take them to those?
Bring a leash for your children.
Yeah.
So that they don't get whisked away by Bigfoot and night crawlers.
Yeah, apparently they're Bigfoot feeding grounds. That's where they let them roam free to hunt children.
Yes. Take your children. Yeah. No, it's even state parks I get freaked out and now. I'm like, dude, do not get out of my sight.
Yeah, I bet. You have to be after hearing this shit on the missing 411.
It's so creepy.
And now knowing they're Bigfoot feeding grounds.
Yeah, Bigfoot feeding grounds. And don't go camping. Stay out of the woods. And if you have to go in the woods, don't bring your kids because they're tasty morsels for hairy hominids.
They're gonna be turning a Bigfoot barbecue.
Yeah, you turn your back for 1 minute and they've got your kid on a spit roasting over an open fire.
Oh God, see, no. Fuck national parks.
Yeah. No, Mateo. They'll fuck you.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.